Okay, good morning and welcome to the Big C meeting. Today is Wednesday, April 26th, the time, 2023. The time is now 9 a.m. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, Madeira Beach, for once again hosting this. This is really you bought the food this time, right? All right, we'll start with the roll call with Mayor Queen.
Adrian Petrilla, St. Pete Beach.
David Will, Mayor, Reddington Beach.
Dave Gaddis, Mayor of Bel Air Beach.
Tyler Payne, Mayor of Treasure Island.
Jim Rostek, Mayor, Madeira Beach.
Okay, out in the audience, we'll start with you. Yeah,
Linda Newton, Indian Rocks Beach.
Jerry Newton, Indian Rocks Beach.
Mark Colucci, Clerk Treasurer, the Town of Bel Air Shore.
Megan Powers, City Madeira Beach, City Manager's Office.
Doreen Moore. Doreen Moore, a member of the Tourist Development Council for Pinellas County and a resident of Madeira Beach.
Robin Miller, President CEO Tampa Bay Beaches, Chamber of Commerce.
Sam Jenkins, SBC's Institute for Strategic Policy.
Eileen Collins, Waterfront Realty.
Chelsea Miller, Waterfront Realty.
Clint Bell, Fire Chief, Madeira Beach Fire Department. Barry Rubin, Treasurer Island, Madeira Beach Chamber of Commerce.
Christina Chilbert, CMC Synergy Fundraising.
Corey Jenkins, Treasure Island, Madeira Beach, Chamber of Commerce.
Ray Kerr, Vice Mayor, Madeira Beach.
Lisa Ryder, CEO of Coastal Wildlife Advocacy Group, and I'm a resident of St. Pete Beach.
Tammy Lawson, Commercial Real Estate, Polaris Realty.
Ashley Jo Minetti, Pinellas County Communications.
Tony Quick-Lampton, Fort Pinellas.
And Christina Mendoza, Fort Pinellas. Lisa Hendrickson, Vice Mayor, Reddington Shores.
Tracy Campbell, Town Clerk, Reddington Shores.
I'm Andrew Morrison from the St. Madeira Beach Community Development Department.
Amber Brooks, Madeira Beach Commissioner.
Greg Nichols, GA Nichols Company. Ben Foley, GA Nichols Company.
I think we missed two right here.
Sherry Hurlbert, resident, Reddington Beach.
And John Robert.
Thank you. Did we miss anyone? No. All right, so the next item on the agenda is any changes to the agenda and approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. All right, approval of the minutes for the Town of Reddington Beach meeting on March 29, 2023, Big C meeting.
There's a slight error in item number 5. We started out with an opening balance of $14.98. There was a disbursement of $70. That would make our new balance $14.28. The minutes reflect $14.78.
Okay,
So we just changed that total from $14.78 to $14.28.
Is that on the minutes from last time?
Yeah, that's on the minutes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'll-
It's just a slight math error, that's all.
Okay.
I'll move.
Second.
okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and now it is the approval of the March 2023 Treasurer Report.
Where's Cookie?
Cookie is absent, it looks like. Do you want to give it, or?
Yes,
Okay.
after correcting that error, there hasn't been any change since our last meeting, so our opening balance is $14.28.10, and there have been no changes, so that's where we stand right now.
Move to
Okay.
approve Treasury's report as amended.
Okay, a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
All right.
Good morning.
Hey, you beat Cookie here.
That's right.
I think she's sitting in
Still not the
Cookie's
last
spot.
one.
But you can. She's invisible today. It's fine. It's okay. Okay, I don't believe there was any correspondence that we need to discuss. So on to new business. Guest speaker is Will Blanton with Forward Pinellas. He's going to give us a key projects update. Morning, Will.
Good morning. Good morning. We're going to tag team this. I'm here with Christina Mendoza of our staff, and she's going to cover maybe the bulk of the presentation. But I do appreciate the opportunity to be here with you again. It's good to see some familiar faces and look forward to a new representative to our board here hopefully shortly.
Thank you.
What I wanted to do today is just spend a little time covering a few things that are ongoing that I think are important to the beach communities as well as all of Pinellas County. And one of the most important things that we're dealing with right now that's not on this slide is the apportionment plan that we're required to do after every census. And we have to submit that to the governor this year. And there's two kind of big issues that I want to just briefly touch on. We have put together a draft apportionment plan, and our board is struggling a little bit with that apportionment plan. We have to base it on the population of the county according to the 2010 census. And we have proposed expanding our board from 13 to 15 members to account for the growth in Pinellas County, particularly in St. Petersburg. So the proposal was to add a third seat for the city of St. Petersburg, and then to break up some of our rotating seats in the inland communities and the northern communities so that it's a little more manageable and we can have that regular access to the board. It struck me as being a little too long to have 6 cities sharing one seat. So we're going to break that into 3 and 3. So that's where the other extra seat comes from. The board has wrestled with that, and the city of Tarpon Springs has really strongly advocated for their own seat on the board. So at our next meeting, we're going to be bringing back some more alternatives for the board to consider. And there's a possibility we could expand the board even to maybe 17 members because the sentiment seems to be more members is better than fewer members. And the city of Clearwater may get a second seat as part of this discussion. So stay tuned for that. That has to be submitted to the governor by the end of the year, and then the governor either approves it or rejects it, and we go about our merry way. The other issue that's in the forefront is there is a bill in the legislature that would require us to do a feasibility analysis and estimate of costs for creating a regional metropolitan planning organization in Tampa Bay that merges the Pinellas MPO, which is Forward Pinellas, with the Hillsborough and Pasco MPOs for more of a regional structure. That bill I'm not opposed to because we are already kind of proceeding in that path in parallel at the regional level. And you never really want Tallahassee dictating to you what you have to do. You want to do it on your own. And so we're working to put that together. We have a memorandum of understanding that has been presented and generally accepted. And we're hoping by the end of the year to have that MOU adopted by the 3 MPOs, which would put us on a path to merging by 2027. And the reason we can't just flip the switch and do it is you want to make sure you're certified by the federal government and the state government so you can receive federal funds, and that takes a little while to get those documents and procedures in place. What that means for the Big C ultimately is that would be a whole new apportionment plan that would be regional in scope. And we think we can still preserve a seat for the beach communities because we think in the regional scheme of things, that's really important because tourism is a huge part of our regional economy. But there's no guarantee of that because we have to base it on population. And there's a lot of population in Hillsborough County. And Pinellas would probably only end up with about 7 or 8 seats under that scenario because state statutes limits it to 25 seats. So we'd have to figure out how we apportion those 8 seats at the regional MPO. There's a lot of more details to come on that, and I just wanted to really let you know that's a heads up. If the bill passes, as I expect it will, then we'll have to produce that feasibility report to the governor, speaker, and Senate president by the end of the year. Are there any quick questions on apportionment?
When you say based on population, is that based on per city, or can that be the entire beaches?
We could look at it as the entire beaches.
Very good.
So, and that ends up being about 3% of the Pinellas County population, if I remember right. And so that's part of why we're justifying the seat that you have today.
Okay.
So again, There's a lot that goes into it, and there's as much art as there is science in trying to develop that. But we think the beaches should have a seat on a regional board for sure. The next thing I want to talk about is our 2050 long-range plan, and boy, that seems like forever away, but this is really the basis for any transportation projects we want to do in Pinellas County. They have to be in this long-range plan if we want state or federal funding for it. And so I know there's been suggestions about a new bridge, there's been suggestions about widening certain roads or expanding public transit. All those things take time to do, and they have to start with the long-range plan. So Advantage Pinellas is the name of that plan. It is a way that we look at growth and development and land use and some of the constraints on where growth and development happen, like in the coastal high hazard area. And that really is the foundation for all of our planning. This is really where we justify how we can advance projects. And if it's in the long-range plan, then what we do is we program things, projects and studies and analyses in the 5-year DOT work program. So once it gets in the long-range plan, we start looking at, okay, what are the priorities and how do we put them into the next 5-year work program? There is a very robust public engagement effort, and right now we have a survey that is happening in 2 forms. One is a mail-out survey that is intended to be statistically valid, where we are sampling the population based on geography, age, gender, and income. And we're going to get those results back that hopefully mirror the demographics of Pinellas County. Race and ethnicity is part of that as well. In parallel, we are doing an online survey that I encourage anybody to fill out, and we're going to compare the 2 results, but that is open to anyone. And again, we're just doing the one survey to make sure it's statistically representative of the population. And then, with online surveys, it's usually people who really want to say something that go online and survey. But we're going to compare the 2. And last time we did this, they were actually really consistent. So that's underway now. We'll also do some focus groups, community outreach, and this ties into some of our ongoing work that we're doing on Gulf Boulevard in terms of safety that Christina will talk about in a moment. So the timeline of this is right now we're finalizing our population and employment projections out to 2050. And in the green chart, what we're projecting is about 100,000 more people living in Pinellas County. That's another city of Clearwater. And then in 2050, another 77,000 jobs in Pinellas County. That is coordinated at the regional level. So we know all of the Tampa Bay area is adding about 2.5 million people. And we're not creating any more beach, so 2.5 million more people want to come over to enjoy our beaches. So we're going to need to plan for that. By the fall of 2024, we will need to adopt the plan, and you can see how we'll kind of hit some key milestones along the way. So I just really wanted to make you aware of that. And if you get questions and want to have people in your communities weigh in on the plan, you can direct them to Ford Pinellas, and we'll be happy to take their comments. The next thing I really want to touch on very quickly is our housing compact that affects the entire county. We have a affordable housing summit this Friday at the Largo Cultural Center. This is a countywide partnership that we've embarked on with Pinellas County and all of the cities that receive housing funding from the federal government through various forms. But we are trying to get this compact signed by all the local governments because even if you're not building affordable housing in your community, you depend in many cases on workers who have affordable housing somewhere in Pinellas County, and they're not commuting an hour and a half or so from Pasco or Hillsborough or something like that. And we're really trying to look at how we link jobs and housing and transportation together through this. We have prepared an action plan for that compact that is implementation oriented. And that will be presented at the Homes for Pinellas Summit on April 28th, this Friday. We will be working with our partners on coordinated messaging because affordable housing is sometimes a difficult topic politically. So, how we frame that, it's homes for everyone, data and tools and resources, and mostly what we need is a common set of terms. Because when somebody talks about affordable housing, it's a different thing in different people's minds. So we want common definitions and terms as part of that. And then we'll track our progress. The goal is to build 10,000 affordable housing units in the next 10 years in the county. And that's just to meet the need that we have today, not to meet the growing need in the future. And this is very much tied to transportation. I'm a big believer that housing policy is transportation policy. and vice versa. Any questions for me on any of those topics? All right, thank you very much. I'll turn it over to Christina to cover the safety aspects.
Thank you, Whit, and thank you everyone for having us today. As Whit just mentioned, my name is Christina Mendoza. I am a principal planner with Forward Pinellas. I am working with the cities of St. Pete Beach and Treasure Island on 2 safety studies for Gulf Boulevard specifically. These are just 2 of the many safety initiatives that are currently ongoing within the beach communities. So just a little project background. We've all seen the headlines. A 70-year-old man was killed and 4 other pedestrians were injured in a St. Pete Beach hit and run. This was back in May of 2021. A couple was hit and killed by a car while crossing Gulf Boulevard. This is just recently, just back in January of 2023. So we know that safety is a huge issue and we're really trying to address it. So we have partnered with the cities of St. Pete Beach and Treasure Island, along with our consulting team, Kimley Horn, to conduct studies to focus on multimodal improvements to improve safety along Gulf Boulevard. These studies will essentially include an existing conditions analysis, a safety analysis, and it will result in the development of corridor conceptual alternatives for the city's consideration. Our goal really with these studies is to improve the safety of the roadway for all users, residents and visitors alike. So as I just mentioned, we are conducting an existing conditions analysis for both cities. As a part of that, we have split the corridor into 3 segments within each city, and we have gone out into the field. We've done field observations. We've done data analysis. The picture on the slide is from the northern segment of St. Pete Beach, and we noted some of the key findings that we noted specifically within that segment. But within St. Pete Beach overall, we noted that sidewalks and bike lanes often conflict with large driveway openings, frequent driveways and curb cuts. We noted that the sidewalks are often flush with the roadway in some areas, and that can cause some safety conflicts. Mid-block crossings with a pedestrian refuge island within the center lane often have limited refuge space, so that's a safety concern as well. And particularly in the northern segment, we noted that a painted bike lane in some areas has potential bicycle and pedestrian conflicts. So this is just an overview of some of the key existing conditions that we've noted that are going to be influencing our recommendations in the final report. Also on the slide, you can see we've developed what we call a typical section of the roadway. Essentially, it's a diagram of the roadway. We've developed one for each segment within each city, and essentially it just shows what the roadway looks like, the lane widths and the sidewalks and bike lanes if applicable. Within St. Pete Beach, of course, we can't talk about safety without looking at crashes. The intersection of 75th Avenue and Gulf Boulevard is the location with the highest number of crashes within St. Pete Beach. Other crash hotspots that we noted include the signalized intersections at the St. Pete Beach access parking lot, 44th Avenue and 35th Avenue, the mid-block crossings near Gulf Winds Drive and 55th Avenue. And of course, we're going to be conducting a safety analysis so that we can better understand what the cause of the crashes are, and that's going to be incorporated into the report as well. We also looked at crashes by type. The most common type of crash on Gulf Boulevard is a rear-end crash. Most crashes occurred near signalized intersections with or near mid-block crossings. There were 18 pedestrian crashes and 20 bicycle crashes between 2017 and 2022. This includes 1 pedestrian fatality, 3 serious injury pedestrian crashes, and 3 serious injury bicycle crashes. When looking at Treasure Island, we noted that these shared lane markings are often not comfortable or safe for all bicyclists. Portions of Gulf Boulevard have a dedicated bike lane with wide sidewalks to accommodate large volumes of pedestrians, which is good. But there are mid-block crossings with rectangular rapid flashing beacons that connect to major attractions. Driveway openings and truck loading often blocks portions of the roadway and bicycle and pedestrian facilities. So that can cause some conflicts. And then also portions of Gulf Boulevard have sidewalks that are flush with the roadway, and they have trench drainage, which also poses some safety concerns. Within Treasure Island, the intersection of 107th Avenue and Gulf Boulevard is the location with the highest number of crashes. Other crash hotspots that we noted include 117th and 116th Avenues, 112th Avenue, and 108th Avenue, as well as the mid-block crossings near 105th, Gulf Boulevard, Blind Pass Road, and West Gulf Boulevard. And again, we'll be conducting a safety analysis to better understand the cause of those crashes. Rear-end crashes is also the most common type of crash in Treasure Island. There were 18 pedestrian crashes and 8 bicycle crashes between 2017 and 2022. This includes 5 fatalities, 4 of which were pedestrian fatalities within this 5-year period. So just some next steps. We plan to develop and finalize the concept alternatives and recommendations. We are going to identify a preferred alternative within each city. We're also planning to incorporate the findings and feedback received into the final report. This is feedback that we received throughout our public engagement process. So far, we have done 1 workshop in St. Pete Beach, 1 public workshop in Treasure Island, and a stakeholder meeting in Treasure Island. We plan to do a second workshop in St. Pete Beach, likely in June of this year. And then we plan to begin implementation once the projects identified are funded. We're working closely with FDOT as they own the roadway, and we need to make sure that the recommendations that come out of this study are implementable. So they've been a key partner in this process, and we've been working closely with them. So with that.
I just want to add one thing about working with FDOT. We've had a lot of success getting the department to understand the importance of safety and the context of the roadway. They're not a one-size-fits-all shop anymore, but sometimes that takes really having conversations at the highest level of the district, because sometimes when you encounter some of the rank-and-file engineers who are, in the program areas, they tend to default to some of the manuals and standard practices, and we've found that they've been less than flexible in some of their applications. But when you raise that bar up to the secretary level or to the senior management within the department, they're very responsive to working with you. So our plan with the Gulf Boulevard project is to really come up with some ideas that we can build support within the department if they're supported by the 2 cities, and then make sure we can get those implemented. So that's really key. We don't want to spring anything on the department. We need to kind of bring them along slowly so that they're comfortable with it. But I've learned from our work in Indian Rocks Beach in particular that if you try to do something without getting the senior management involved, you may just get a nope, nope, nope kind of response. And it's important to get beyond that whenever we can. Are there any questions about what we're working on these days?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
So whatever you implement at St. Pete Beach and Treasure Island, as far as changing the way things look, it needs to be consistent up through the beaches so everything's the same in the safety. So if you're going to change something that pertains to crosswalks or the bike lanes, we need to have that the same, so nobody's confused on it. And north of Indian Rocks Beach, I believe, is County Road. South is FDOT. So as much as we can get them all the same, the better off we are.
Yeah, I agree. It's a little frustrating going up and down Gulf Boulevard to see all the differences that are there. And, there's a rationale for why there's some differences, but getting things as consistent as possible is always a good strategy.
Safety consistency. The roads are different everywhere.
Yeah.
His roads are different than mine. My roads are different than Reddington Shores and Indian Shores. So there's a lot of different, but we need to make the safety things the same.
Yep.
Yeah, Wood, I have a question. I get very nervous when I look at studies like this because of the funding issues. And as you know, I've been working with Secretary Gwen, I guess, and Richard Moss at FDOT, and I agree with you. They're great to work with, and when you get it up at that level, things get done. But, we've got a situation where everything you've identified here is in Indian Shores with no sidewalks, people walking on the side of the road, and, you guys have heard this ad nauseum probably, but it's an expensive project, but it's long overdue. And I just want to make sure that we don't get somehow backdoored on this.
Mayor, you're in the queue.
Great.
None of
I
these.
want to hear from you.
None of these projects are yet in the queue. And so that's the key is really when this is done, which will be this year, is then prioritizing them and getting them in the 5-year work program, but they're not going to come before the Indian Shores sidewalk project.
Thank you.
Now, what I have found with the department is that they come up to us every now and then and say, you got a project, where you need $500,000, $1 million, because sometimes that's lying around, like in February, March, projects get deferred or projects come in under budget, not often, but if they get deferred, sometimes there's some money that's freed up. So we are looking for low-cost, sort of tactical fixes that can be done, again, consistent with, the typology. And it wouldn't surprise me that if there's a project out there that's $700,000, $800,000 or $300,000 or $1 million, that we could kind of jump and get that advanced. But when you start talking 20 million or 15 million or 30 million, it's a much heavier lift to get that funded.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Understood.
Listen, I want to thank you all for your time, and we'll stick around and entertain any further questions after the meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wood.
All right, the next item is the Audit Committee report of the state of the Big C finances and financial record keeping.
We gave that audit report last meeting, but I'll just reiterate it. We checked over the books. Everything looked great, with the exception of what Dave has recommended on changing. Books look good.
All right. The next item is selection of Forward Pinellas Beach Community Representative.
And the committee came up with a suggestion which is Dave Will. And I think we've already voted on that.
Voted on it.
I think we did, yeah.
Yeah, we did too.
No, I'm talking about the
there's
city.
a-
Each city has to vote separately.
Right.
So who has voted on that?
We did.
Okay. So everybody has to vote on that.
Everyone should have submitted those. I think we each have to take formal action at our city. I think that's why it's coming back, is because we didn't follow the proper procedure. We were made aware of that by Forward Pinellas. So we have a resolution that we should have shared with the Big C, I guess. So I think I read the minutes from the last time we did this, and there was kind of a bullet point in the minutes of who each city took formal action to nominate. That's how it was done last year.
So who
Or
hasn't
last
done it
time.
yet?
We did the nomination, everybody agreed with it, so that was all the same. Then it goes back to your cities for your resolutions.
Right.
And then it's complete. So
Yeah,
it's basically the
who's
same.
done that?
I'm sorry?
Has everyone done that already?
I've done it.
We did a vote, but we did not send a resolution.
Yeah, we
Yeah, you got to
voted.
send a resolution in.
Okay. I'll
You
get
have
that out.
that?
I'll get that out
You have a
today.
resolution that you could just send to
Yeah.
us for, okay.
We approved the nomination of David Will.
We did too, but we didn't do a resolution per se, so we can fix that, Tracy.
Is.
Whit, are you still here?
Yeah.
Do we need a resolution from each town?
Yeah, I think that's the procedure, is to get a resolution from
Okay.
each city endorsing that selection, that's all.
Okay.
Right. So if you just voted on it, just change it, just do a
Yep.
resolution, and you'd be done with it.
It's excluding Clearwater, so you guys don't have to do it.
Yeah, you don't have to do it.
You have your own seat.
Unfortunately, it requires a meeting to do a resolution, though. So in my case, it'll be at the beginning of the first Wednesday.
The May meeting?
Yeah.
It doesn't say a resolution, so it says each Big C municipality excluding Clearwater shall take formal action to either nominate one of its own elected officials or support the nomination of an elected official from another community. The name of that individual should be transmitted to the Big C via Tracy Campbell, Town Clerk of Reddington Shores, before the April 26th Big C meeting. That letter was distributed to all of us too. So it may not need to be a resolution. If you voted on it
Yeah.
at a meeting, then that's probably sufficient.
that's
And the
that's
minutes
accurate.
from the meeting are probably
Would think that's
sufficient.
Okay.
So has Madeira Beach done that? Do you know? No. Not yet. Okay.
How about St. Pete Beach?
Treasure Island did, David Will.
You didn't, right? St. Pete Beach has not.
Okay, so only two, Madeira and Madeira and St. Pete Beach.
Bel Air Shore also didn't,
You did not?
did not.
Okay.
We just did not vote on it at the meeting,
So you can add that to your
but it won't be.
agenda? Okay.
And this letter is in the packet for today's meeting, if anyone needs to reference it. Then it says, after nominations are received, then the Big C by majority vote shall recommend an appointment.
And that's what you need to do today.
Can we do that before we have all of the city's
You
nominations?
can, yeah. I think that would be fine.
If they didn't follow the procedure at this point.
Then you can do
it's
it
fine to-
afterwards. Yeah, that'll work.
Okay.
All right.
So we can just go with so did everyone suggest nominate David Will?
Well, the nominating committee nominated Dave Will, and then we went to a vote here, and
Yeah, but
everybody
each
voted for him.
city has to nominate him.
So we're going to redo the vote? right now? Is that the plan?
Yes, we can.
Whatever
my-
makes it simple. Let's just redo the vote and do it.
Let me nominate Dave
The
Will.
nominating committee nominated Dave Will.
Right.
All right.
Call for the vote.
You made the motion? to
Yeah,
nominate?
second.
Just a sec. Okay, got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now it's formal again.
Excellent.
Okay.
Speech.
And Mayor,
Thank you very much.
But just make sure that you guys do that at your
yeah,
meetings.
that would be good to follow
And
up
then the next step is that the
it.
municipal government board on which the recommended elected official serves has to confirm the appointment. So Dave, your commission has to approve that, has to confirm your appointment.
I'll see what I can do.
And if you're able to do it, we'd welcome you to the May meeting. We do not have a June meeting, so it would be May or July when we would seat you.
Okay, great. Looking forward to it.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you, Tyler, for clearing up the formalities.
All right, so the next item is nominations of the Tourist Development Council representative.
And we did a nomination on that, but I'd like to, again, add to that and nominate Tyler Payne to be on that list also. I believe the list was Dave Gaddis and Bob Schmidt. And I'd like to add Tyler to that. So I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion or? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
So we will send that to those three names.
To TDC.
TDC.
Right.
Okay.
To the county.
All right, now consideration of nominating committee's recommendation for appointment of the Big C president, vice president, secretary, treasurer for the 2-year term.
We might have to review that.
We did that.
No, I'm just kidding.
She's not even here. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So the review is, normally it's just, you just move up as the seats become vacant. So you were the president, Cookie's the vice president, and we were going to appoint, or we nominated Dave Will to be the secretary. And that's what happened at our last meeting.
We voted on it.
Yes, we voted on it. So that's been taken care of. Unless you want to vote on it again, which we can do.
No, just, there were so many different things that happened that
Okay.
one.
I think it's just the oath at this point, right? Or
Right.
did you do the
And
oath last
who even
year?
administers the oath?
Sometimes they have the oath, sometimes they don't.
Oh.
If you want to have somebody administer the oath, you can bring somebody in here to read you the oath and swear it in. It's up to you. We've done it for years without
I have
that.
a missing one.
Yeah, I know.
He's
I
not
know.
here, so.
Why don't you wait till we have a full agenda
All
and
right.
just have somebody that can read it off for you?
Perfect.
You can do them all three at the same time.
All right. All right, moving on to old business. Any old business? Nothing. Discussion items.
Discussion items, the state of the beaches is tomorrow night at Treasure Island. And that, usually what we're going to talk about is, we've only had one of these, so this is the second time we've done it. And we talk about beach renourishment, undergrounding, and what was the other thing we were talking about? Undergrounding, beach renourishment,
safe.
and the
Pedestrian
legislation
safety would
that's
be-
pending against us.
The people organizing it are here. Maybe they'd like to give a
Short-term
little
rentals.
summary.
Where's Sam?
I mean, there's a
Sam, do you
whole
want
laundry
to?
list.
Come on up, Sam.
Good morning, Sam Jenkins with SPC's Institute for Strategic Policy Solutions. We're looking forward to tomorrow night at Treasure Island City Hall. Thank you, Mayor Payne, Process, and your staff. We have 7 mayors coming, moderated by Al Rochelle, talking about beach nourishment, hurricane preparedness, all the things that are affecting your constituents. It's tomorrow night, Treasure Island City Hall. If anybody has any questions, we're partnering with the chamber, and we look forward to hearing from you guys and seeing you guys tomorrow night. So,
5:30.
yes, sir.
5:30.
And you have food, right?
Yes.
That brings people.
Nice.
Sloppy Joe's Treasure Island.
Nice.
Perfect. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, guys.
All right, legislative update. Anyone?
Yes.
I figured.
Cookie and I went to Tallahassee last week, and we both spoke at 2 different committees on the SB 714, the short-term rental bill. And, of course, we were both there opposing the bill, and our goal was to expose that this bill does not help us in any way and does not bring us any tools. We made that very clear to the committees. And actually, what was interesting, all sides involved in the Airbnb industry were there to speak against the bill. the industry, the people who rent Airbnbs, the platforms, and local governments. And yet, the bill passed through both committees. So our goal, like I say, was to educate and bring light that this bill will actually remove and re-preempt us back to the 2011 initial preemption. Also, yesterday, one of my commissioners, Jim Murray, went up to speak at the final Senate committee, and he'll come up and say a couple words about that. If you weren't watching the Florida channel, you missed out because he did an excellent job.
Thank you, it's very kind. Yeah, so that was quite an experience yesterday. It was a lot of fun. But we had several people that spoke in addition to myself. Mark Ryan, who used to be a city manager, spoke on our behalf, as well as our lobbyist, Mr. Corey. VRBO did speak, and they were satisfied with the bill.
With
They
the
were
latest
satisfied.
amendment. Yeah.
They were, yeah. I gave a speech that Mayor Will and Attorney Eschenfelder helped me create. We were pretty adamant about preemption and the things we did not like in it. I was afraid I was going to be limited to 3 minutes. They gave me as much time as I wanted, which was great. They did ask me some questions at the end about, the ordinances that you already have, will you be able to keep them? And I said, absolutely, we will not be able to do that. He said, well, what ordinances do you have that you would want to keep? And I went through, parking, noise, having rules set up, within the VRBOs that talk about our local ordinances, and people come and don't even know them. Occupancy. So then I sat down, and it was interesting because a lot of the senators complimented Senator DeSigley about, the work he had done on this, used some of my points as selling points, which was kind of interesting. But one thing did happen that I thought was surprising. Senator Mayfield, who was the Madam Chairperson yesterday and actually running the show, I had been sitting in my seat. They went through their kind of debate about the bill, their comments, and then they did the vote. It did vote through. But then she did reiterate how important this was to her, and then singled me out, called me in the audience and said, Jim Murray from Huntington Beach, I want to work with you on the final version of this. Obviously, it's this week. But Mayor Will and I will be sitting down after this meeting and crafting a note to her specifically. So perhaps it will have some difference. We've come up with some wording, and she did seem, how should I put it, sympathetic. She even said, if you've never lived beside a short-term rental, you should try doing it because it's pretty tough. And she said this was very important to her, and she wanted to get it right if at all possible. There's been a lot of, I don't know how much you guys have kept up with the bill, but there's been a lot of amendments that have happened. Most of them, more sympathetic to like a VRBO, but some sympathetic to us. So hopefully we can change that in some way and have some type of positive effect for us all.
How did she vote?
Yes, she voted yes. As a matter of fact, they even have a lot of dissenters that voted no last time. They said they voted no and voted yes. But we did have some Republicans that changed their mind. We did. Not many, but we had a couple that did fall out. And our lobbyist told me which ones it was because I just wasn't aware of what everyone had voted for historically. So
How did Pinellas County vote?
yes, he obviously voted for it. And surprisingly, he did not ask me any questions because I was kind of ready for that one. And probably was not going to be quite as nice as Mayor Will had been in the past. So
He asked you questions because he won't talk to Dave.
yeah, he didn't ask me any questions either.
Oh, he didn't?
No, he did not ask me any questions. Actually, it was a gentleman named Senator Travis Hudson who asked me majority of the questions, and he made a point to tell me that he was greatly involved in the 2014 vote. So, we should probably decide if we want to send him something or not. And I don't know. It was hard to get a feeling as to, if he was pro us still having our authority or not. I'm not sure. I just don't know.
Well, the obstacle seems to be, what I found out when I was there, educating our legislators on exactly where we are right now. They have either don't know or forgotten the 2014 legislation. And what was interesting is that Senator Mayfield in 2014 was in the House, and she was a sponsor of the bill to bring back our authority to regulate short-term rentals, along with Kathleen Peters and Senator Hooper. So reminding her of that this is actually reversing your position from 2014.
Yeah, she actually did ask Pinellas County Senator that she had a specific legislation that her constituents wanted that happened in the past. And she specifically asked him about that law and would it be preempted, and he said no. In one of the amendments, you may see that things before 2011 will be kept intact. So again, it's not all negative. It's certainly not what we wanted. It's quite an experience going up there, so.
But it was.
This bill, and to piggyback on the 2011 piece, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I just texted our lobbyist before the meeting and asked him for some clarification, RJ Myers with Shoemaker. And so there's part of the bill that gets tacked on right after that. This paragraph does not apply to any ordinance adopted before June 1st, 2011, the grandfathering provision. They've added on to that that the paragraph doesn't apply to any such law or ordinance that's amended to be less restrictive. So we can change, that's something that I would love to see. That's giving more power to the cities than we currently have. Currently, we can't amend it at all, or we're gonna lose it entirely. So is anyone going to make it less restrictive? Probably not, but that does give us the ability to do something to it rather than having to be stuck with it completely. And it also adds, which I hadn't noticed before, it says, or when an ordinance adopted after June 1st, 2011 regulates vacation rentals if such ordinance is less restrictive than a law that was in effect on June 1st, 2011. And I asked RJ, I was like, based on my reading of that, that would mean that if there's a community that had a law or an ordinance on June 1st, 2011, and then thereafter tried to amend it and lost their ordinance entirely because they changed it, they could now, if this bill is passed, go back and re-implement that law that was on the books on June 1st, 2011, and just tweak it slightly and make it slightly less restrictive, and they can have an ordinance back on the books instead of having nothing. So is that not something that, some of our communities don't have any ordinance that regulates short-term rentals at all because they've lost that. Is that not a big win? I read that as, is it giving us the home rule entirely? No, but it's allowing us to put something back in place that some of your communities have nothing because it's been ruled that you made changes when you weren't allowed to and then everything got wiped away. Is that not exactly the situation in Indian Rocks Beach? I wish Cookie was here.
Yes.
It also states that these regulations cannot be solely targeted to short-term rentals.
I think that makes sense. If you're going to make
So
a
that
rule,
means-
it should be uniformly applicable to everyone in the
Right,
city.
well, so the short-term rentals have created the issues with parking and noise and occupancy. I'm not going to regulate, and we can't, of course, with the Fair Housing Act, regulate occupancy on a residential home, which in this bill here, it states that occupancy would have to be the same for any rented property, which is a short-term rental or someone renting long-term. So targeting parking for short-term rentals.
That's one of the things we've asked for, though, is it says in this bill also that as part of the registration process, you can state the maximum occupancy of the vacation rental based on the number of sleeping accommodations for persons staying overnight in the vacation rental.
So let's talk
That's
about.
something we've asked for, right?
They're setting a standard.
they've put
We
in
would
there.
like to set our standard, and we've already done that.
No, they didn't.
We
They
can
said we
already
can
do
set
that.
that standard, the
What is the
maximum
necessity
occupancy.
of that when we already have that ability?
We don't
we-
have the ability to change our ordinances right now or re-implement an ordinance
And-
that got
and
stricken.
You make an excellent point about being less restrictive in order to save it. But being less restrictive doesn't help us in any, we have a parking ordinance.
It's more restrictive than what's in place for a lot of cities across Florida that have lost
What
their
happens
ordinance
to
entirely.
What happens to our parking ordinance when this bill passes for short-term rentals? We lose
I
it.
don't know, what is your,
We lose it.
you have an ordinance that
Yes. Now,
specifies
this
parking
helps
on,
us with party houses. See, if you're staying at a short-term rental, our ordinance states that the cars would be parked on-site. And if you're coming on a vacation, that shouldn't be a problem to park in the driveway. If you're having an event like a wedding, or you're having large parties, now you have cars up and down the street. So our ordinance states that your short-term rentals, the cars associated with that short-term rental would be parked on-site.
Can't you create a parking pass system that you have to have a parking? We're about to do that in Sunset Beach.
Well, I'd
We
like
have-
to be able to.
We have neighborhood parking
Right
that we're about to
now,
implement a street
according
parking
to
pass
our-
program for, because we have parking issues down there.
Right.
So you'd have to have a
But
temporary parking pass.
I would like to
or-
target the situations that are causing those problems. The residential, my neighbor, the little old lady next door, isn't causing these problems. So I don't need to target a blanket ordinance that targets her. So right now, from the 2014 legislation, it's very clear, it was SB 356 and HB 307. We have the ability to distinguish between residential homes and short-term rentals as far as regulation goes. I would like to keep doing that. This bill takes that away.
Can I add two more things to that?
Of
So
course.
when you talk about the occupancy, I read through that, and here's the problem with the wording and the way it is now. They can identify the occupancy. Our ordinance says the occupancy is per the number of bedrooms in a house. I went through some listings last night of VRBO. We have 1 2-bedroom, 1 house in Reddington Beach. They have 10 people occupancy, 10 person in a 2-1. So by doing that, they've actually satisfied that requirement. What we've tried to say is if you have 2 bedrooms, you have 4 people in it.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is, let's look at just a common sense rule where it should not apply to our residents.
But it's based on the number of sleeping accommodations.
You know what their sleeping
for the
accommodations
persons.
were? I have fold-out beds, multiple fold-out beds. I have roll-away beds I bring in the house. It's a party house. You know, we get everybody in there, we have a big party, and then you sleep wherever you can pass. I shouldn't say that. But here's another common sense one, and that is this. Clearly, people visiting our beaches, and I imagine you guys have discussed a lot of things that have happened, electric bicycles, dogs on the beach. People that come here do not know these rules. Common sense is, I mean, the hotel I stayed at in Tallahassee had rules and safety guidelines on the placard on the door. That should be in every VRBO to tell people, here's what the things that we expect of you. But there's no reason to have that for our residents. We've lived here forever. We know the rules. So that's, again, something that should not be applied to residents, just common
Jim,
sense.
go back to the motel thing again. If you went into a motel and you broke their rules, what happens to you?
You get thrown out.
You get
and it's
thrown out.
certainly
What
enforced.
happens to you if you break the rules in a VRBO? Nothing.
And, go ahead.
I'm sorry, what is wrong with the residents of whatever community coming together and deciding what regulations are best for them to maintain the residential and family character of their community? If Treasure Island would like to do the regulations differently, that is up to you and your residents.
I
When you
agree
centralize
wholeheartedly.
authority and have a blanket ordinance, I think that's a major red flag.
I agree. The issue is, I'm more realistic. I'm a little bit more pragmatic than that. I have been to Tallahassee many times. I know that we are not going to have our home rule on this issue restored entirely. It's a pipe dream. So we have to take what we can get. We have to work with our legislators. They have been trying to pass something to this effect for years, and we've stood in the way several times, and at this point, we've done a better job of working with them, identifying things in the bill that we would like to change, but just asking them to restore our home rule entirely on vacation rentals, it's not going to happen. So
I'm not
we need to
asking them
take a
to
more
restore
reasonable
it.
approach, and as the mayor of Treasure Island, I am okay with this bill. I went to Tallahassee, I waved in support of Nick DeSigley's bill, and this does give us in Treasure Island more tools to be able to regulate this. Right now, we cannot go through with a code violation on a vacation rentals because we don't have the tools to pursue that violation.
Is that because you
And-
never had the rules in the beginning?
No, we have an ordinance.
Okay, so you never lost your grandfathering. You're still grandfathered in, right?
Correct.
There's only 2 towns that lost their ability, Reddington Beach and Indian Rocks Beach. So everybody else is able to control everything just like they did before. So you shouldn't have a problem with that, right?
Right. I believe that this gives us tools to be able to partner with DBPR, partner with the state, create registration program that we don't have right now. I know that we are able to do that as it stands, but this does give some more tools for us and more of a stick to be able to punish those that do violate the rules. If they don't comply with the registration, we can revoke and terminate their registration, and we have the backing of the state to revoke that and keep that registration revoked as well. So
I have a question about that. If you're now able to regulate something that you could not before, I believe that that would be instantly challenged as more restrictive, because you're now regulating something that you couldn't prior to making a change. And so trying to have an argument that we're doing something less restrictive by introducing a new regulation, it just seems to me that it's a trap. That's what it sounds like to me.
Did I hear you right about this will create a registration process that outside of the business tax registration process?
And you can charge each vacation rental $150 registration fee, plus a reasonable fee to send your building inspector and your fire safety inspector out to inspect the building, which I spoke to Senator DeSigley about that, about the $150 fee. He said that they were lining that up with some other fee from DBPR. That was the rationale behind that, but it was initially lower than $150. It was, I believe, $75. $50. So he increased that through the Suncoast League of Cities went up there. We had a huge meeting in a conference room with him, and that was one of our biggest requests, was that they increase that, and he did increase it. And part of that was, he said, we're also, what this was not in there previously, was a reasonable fee for the fire and the safety inspection. So he said, you can make up what you can't charge on what you're capped at $150 for the registration fee. You can make up some for that because you don't have a limit on the safety inspection. So you have two fees that they have to pay.
We can already set that. And cities all over the
But my
state-
city attorney is telling me that I cannot, she is advising that we not touch anything relating to vacation rentals because we are at risk of losing our ordinance. I don't want to touch my ordinance and create a registration program. While some city attorneys may agree that that is okay and you can do it, my city attorney's opinion is that she doesn't want us to touch it at all because it would put us at risk of losing what we do have.
Do you feel a $150 registration fee? Also, that goes to what, 20, 25? If you have multiple units, so 150 isn't just for one unit. If you have one unit, you're paying 150. If you have 20 or 25.
25, you pay 200.
25, it was 200.
Right.
So how do you,
That's where you can make up
how
on
do
the
you cover
individual.
code enforcement for that? Code enforcement works, normally our code enforcement is 8 to 4, and we're going out looking for tall grass and things like that. So now we are in the hotel management business. So that's a whole nother entity that we're not able to just absorb in our normal code enforcement. And your violations for short-term rentals with noise and parking are happening during that second shift.
Did anyone do a cost analysis of what the break even would be on that and provide it to Senator DeSigley? I did.
And you can cover that
Yeah.
at $150 with multiple. Okay. We are a town of 4, and all these other beach towns are smaller, where you have businesses and hotels and a substantial code enforcement already. We do not. So this is a brand-new thing for us. So now we have 2 girls in the office.
This would be
So we're gonna
considering
need
hiring
another
new
girl.
people. We did a break-even analysis
Right.
for the software it would require and the additional code enforcement.
So what happens to the ordinances that all the towns put in place since 2014 when they were able to do that? Okay, well, the 3 things we couldn't do was ban frequency and duration. At that time, cities put in ordinances to regulate short-term rentals. What happens to all of those ordinances? They lose them with this bill. This bill states this is what you can do. So anything else outside of that, you cannot. And if for some reason we can keep everything that we're doing and that we've been doing since 2014, what is the purpose of this bill then?
Why don't we do this?
Yeah.
Why don't we have an attorney come back from the Florida League of Cities, come back and tell us, these bills have passed, correct?
Not yet, it hasn't
Okay,
passed
well,
this.
as soon as they pass, we'll have an attorney come in and give us an overview of everything that we've got, like we did last month.
I agree.
And
And
Randy
Mayor
made it
Will,
very
you and I have
clear.
gone back and forth on this a lot in private, and we don't need to go
Right.
into the
Right.
details. My message for the public is that not every city is opposed to this, and that there are, in my opinion, pros to this, and there's a different approach than opposing it outright. My approach is to work with our legislators. I recognize the reality that something is going to pass eventually, whether it's this year, next year, 2 years from now, something is going to pass. They're not going to just drop this and let us do whatever we want. So I believe the best approach is to work with our legislators and make changes to what they're proposing that we can be okay with. And I think that's what's going to be, put this issue to bed. I'm ready. We've been talking about this for 5 years, 11
10
years.
years.
So we need
Isn't
to,
that part of
sorry,
the-
I've only been in office for 5 years, so I've been talking about it for 5 years.
I've been
But-
19 years, we've
Yeah.
been talking about it forever.
Yeah,
And we
so
need to
let-
change legislators.
So I respect your position. I feel differently. The residents of my community want to be able to voice their opinion, and they want that to be heard, and they want to shape their community. When the state preempts us in any way, we have something to say about that. So our job is to educate our legislators on how our residents feel and how this bill will affect us and how this bill will take away. Every session, there are preemptions, and that takes away our ability, that takes away your voice to participate. So for you to come to town hall and say, you're for this or you're against this, and we can have those discussions, and that's great. But now, the preemptions take that discussion away.
That's where we need to educate the public on what these preemptions mean to their
Exactly,
communities.
exactly. So I understand that, yes, or maybe you're wanting to work and but I want to you can play good cop and I'll play the bad cop. Thank you, Jimmy.
All right, thank
Yeah.
you. We could probably have a meeting on this every single month.
Absolutely.
SB1.
All right, let's move on to city events. Mayor Queen, we'll start.
Everything's quiet in North Reading Beach.
We're going to have a market in downtown Clearwater, and we're having Pat Benatar, Natalie Merchant, and Art Garfunkel in Ruth Eckerd Hall, as well as Capitol Theater, and that's all the next week.
Thank you.
St. Pete Beach, April 28th, got a Tom Petty experience. How about now?
Yes, better.
All right, April 28th, St. Pete Beach, we have a Tom Petty tribute band in the evening. And I think everybody else here got a invitation to the Fire Operations 101 on May 13th. And then also, this is for our chamber. Starting next week, we're going to be doing a spotlight on a business video series every other week on a local St. Pete Beach business. So if you have any that would like to participate, contact Sarah at City Hall, and we'll be doing spotlights on all those businesses.
All is well in Reddington Beach.
All is quiet in Bel Air Beach.
Ditto for Indian Shores.
Just wanted to give a shout out to we have a Friday morning market in Treasure Island, sponsored by the Treasure Island Madeira Beach Chamber of Commerce, so I encourage everyone to come check that out. But otherwise, not too much going on in Treasure Island. See you guys on Thursday, tomorrow.
Madeira Beach, we're kind of busy. I do believe we have the Wednesday market being set up today. So if you'd like to stop by on the way out, just find some parking behind the post office and stop by. Thursday, April 27th through the 29th, we have the 30th Annual King of the Beach Fishing Tournament. Friday, April 28th, we have Final Friday at John's Pass. Music group is Lee Cole and the Wranglers. Monday, May 1st, reminder, is the start of sea turtle nesting season. Saturday, May 6th, we have Cinco Dog Mayo, the 5K and 1 mile dog walk, both are at Archibald Park. Saturday, May 6th, we have the Trash Pirates monthly cleanup at John's Pass and Archibald Park. And finally, May 6th, we have the Group of Gala starting at 5 p.m. at Rock Park. And we have the Black Honkies Band, fireworks at 9 p.m. Please stop by.
All right. All quiet in Reddington Shores. The next meeting will be Wednesday, May 31st, 2023, and it's not here. It's going to be at St. Pete Beach for a change, so we're going to have a little bit of a field trip next month. At St. Pete Beach. Thank you all for coming. Meeting adjourned.